Have you ever made a decision that felt completely your own, only to realize later that something invisible had already made it for you? Not a person, not a rule, not even a conscious thought. Something far more subtle than that. Something you never agreed to follow, but somehow never questioned either. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden standard that has been quietly running the show in your life, shaping your choices, your relationships, your ambitions, and even the way you feel about yourself when nobody's watching. This is going to make you uncomfortable, and that's exactly the point. Let me start with a question. When was the last time you did something purely because you wanted to? Not because it was expected, not because someone would notice, not because it fit a certain image you've been carefully maintaining. Just pure, unfiltered desire with zero external noise attached to it. If you're sitting there struggling to think of an example, that tells you something important. It tells you that the standard I'm talking about is already deeply embedded in how you operate, and you probably haven't noticed it until right now. So what is this invisible standard? It doesn't have one single name. Some people call it the internal rulebook. Others describe it as the benchmark you measure yourself against without ever consciously setting it. But here's the most accurate way I can describe it. It's a composite image of who you're supposed to be, built entirely from outside sources, absorbed over years, and then internalized so deeply that it now feels like it came from you. Think about every single message you received growing up, from your parents, your teachers, your friends, the television shows you watched, the social media feeds you scroll through today. Every single one of those sources was quietly depositing a brick into a wall you didn't know was being built around you. A wall made up of expectations about success, appearance, behavior, relationships, ambition, happiness. And at some point, that wall became your standard, your measuring stick for whether you're doing life right or wrong. Here's what makes it so incredibly powerful. You stopped questioning it. You stopped asking where it came from. You just started using it. Every morning when you wake up, this invisible standard is already running in the background like software you never chose to install. It evaluates your choices before you even consciously make them. It compares your life to a template you've never actually seen written down. And when you fall short of it, which of course you frequently do, it generates a very specific feeling, that low hum of inadequacy, that quiet sense that you should be further along, that nagging voice that says everyone else seems to have figured something out that you haven't. Sound familiar? Good. Because recognizing this is the first real step towards something genuinely different. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. This standard isn't static. It shapeshifts. It evolves in the cruelest possible way. The moment you actually reach one of its benchmarks, it moves. You finally get the promotion you've been working toward, and instead of satisfaction, there's a brief flicker of relief followed immediately by the standard recalibrating. Now you need the next promotion, the bigger house, the better relationship, the more impressive version of the life you just built. It's a moving target designed in such a way that you can never actually arrive at it. And the most sophisticated thing about this whole mechanism is that it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like motivation. It feels like drive. It feels like the healthy ambition that separates successful people from unsuccessful ones. That's the disguise it wears. That's how it stays invisible. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine two people. Person A is genuinely passionate about creating art. They love the process. They love the exploration. They'd do it if nobody ever saw it. Person B also creates art, but somewhere along the way, absorbed the idea that a real artist gets recognition, builds an audience, monetizes their work. Person B creates constantly, posts constantly, checks metrics constantly. On the outside, they look more productive than Person A, but internally, they are exhausted and hollow in a way they can't fully explain. The invisible standard has colonized their creative process and turned something that should feed them into something that constantly evaluates them. This pattern shows up everywhere, in fitness, where you chase body standards absorbed from media and comparison rather than genuine health. In relationships, where you pursue or stay in partnerships based on how they look from the outside rather than how they actually feel from the inside. In careers, where you climb ladders leading to destinations you chose at 22 and never actually revisited as a conscious adult. So how did this happen? How did we all end up living by standards we never consciously chose? The honest answer involves understanding how human beings are wired. We are deeply social creatures, and our brains are designed to be extraordinarily sensitive to social signals. Belonging and acceptance once meant survival. Rejection once meant death. So our brains developed a powerful system for scanning the environment, detecting what the group values, and adapting our behavior accordingly. This system is ancient and it's automatic. The problem is that we are now living in an environment our ancestors could never have imagined. An environment flooded with social signals from thousands of sources simultaneously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The comparison pool that used to be your immediate village is now the entire planet. Every person you follow online is another data point feeding into your internal standard, raising the benchmark, expanding the gap between where you are and where the standard says you should be. And nobody opted into this. It just happened. The technology arrived, you started using it, and the algorithm got very good very quickly at showing you exactly the kind of content that would make you feel slightly inadequate and therefore keep scrolling. There is a direct line between the business model of social media and the invisible standard that controls your life. This is not conspiracy thinking. This is just following the incentives. But here's where I want to push back against the temptation to make this entire conversation about blaming external forces, because that's another trap. Yes, outside influences shaped your internal standard, but right now, today, you are the one maintaining it. You are the one applying it. You are the one who wakes up each morning and runs your life through that filter, without pausing to ask whether the filter is actually yours. The question worth asking right now is not where did this standard come from. The more powerful question is whether this standard is actually serving you. Is it moving you toward a life that genuinely resonates with who you are, what you value, what actually brings you alive? Or is it moving you toward an image, a performance of a life that looks good when described to others but feels hollow when you're actually living it? Here's a practical exercise. Take one area of your life where you feel the most pressure, the most inadequacy, the most chronic sense of not being enough. Now ask yourself 3 questions. First, where did this standard actually come from? Trace it back as specifically as you can. Not just society, but actual specific sources, specific moments, specific messages. Second, does this standard reflect what I genuinely want? Or does it reflect what I absorbed from people and systems outside of me? And third, if nobody could ever know whether I met this standard or not, would it still matter to me? That third question is the most revealing one, because the things that genuinely matter to you will still matter even in private. The standards that were never truly yours will quietly dissolve when the audience disappears. This is not a call to abandon ambition or stop caring about growth. Growth is one of the most deeply human impulses there is. But there is a profound difference between growth towards something real inside you versus growth towards something externally defined that you mistook for your own desire. One fills you up as you pursue it. The other depletes you even when you succeed. The invisible standard controlling your life is invisible because you stopped looking at it. You got busy. The world got loud. And somewhere in that noise, you outsourced the authorship of your own life without realizing you'd done it. Reclaiming that authorship doesn't happen in a single conversation or a single moment of insight. It's a practice, a repeated daily decision to slow down, examine the filter, and consciously choose which standards you want to actually live by. But it starts here. It starts with the willingness to look directly at something you've been letting operate in the background for years. Because the moment you can see the standard, you have a choice. And for most people, that's the first genuinely free choice they've made in a very long time. If this hits something real for you, sit with it. Don't rush past it. The discomfort you feel right now is not a problem to solve. It's information. It's the beginning of something. Now, if this shifted something in you, go deeper. Your next step is already waiting.